All right, welcome back, everyone. I thought I'd make one more episode today on draft history. I made one before and rambled a little bit, you know me, so I'm going to start over and make a little bit more condensed, more to the point. This episode, I kind of want to show you guys, in case you didn't realize, you go to the MLB and then rookie draft, and you go to the draft history. If you don't know, you can go to your views and you can make a view with this last one, miscellaneous here, and then you go to draft team, draft round, all that stuff. So then you can make one where you can see everything really easily. So this is 2020's draft, the very first draft, and it'll show round pick overall. So it's a really cool way to just quickly see everybody. I didn't realize you could do this feature for a few years, so I'm sure a couple of you guys watching this video maybe don't know that, and it'll help. So really interesting to look back at the other drafts while we're in the draft now and kind of learn from your mistakes. Another cool way is if you go to this, you go to team history, and then you go to history index and you go to draft history, and then you can see everybody you've taken, and you just switch the teams at the top here. So this is a cool way to also see all your it's a really easy way to scroll through your like 30th round picks from years prior. So that's a cool thing to do too. So if you look at this draft here, 2020, if you look at the first overall picks we've had in the history of TLG, you got Peaker Armstrong. Looks like he's developed like they thought he would. Big trade for a catcher a couple years ago, brought him over to Pittsburgh. Hurstad is a legitimate superstar, absolute monster. So back-to-back center fielders going 1 and 2. I guess he's playing some left field this year, but incredible talent in Hurstad there. One of the best players in the major leagues. Emerson Hancock, an absolute beast starting pitcher for Miami, has incredible pitches, incredible stuff, incredible controls. Looks like he'll turn into an awesome top starting pitcher. Asa Lacy, obviously for Pittsburgh, has developed really nicely. So Pittsburgh has the first and fourth overall picks in their roster. Got that number one guy in a trade. Torkelson's really good, and then you got a couple guys that haven't quite developed as they thought. Jared Jones, one of the best players from this draft, a teenage high school arm that went 11th overall, turned into a monster, and then you have Drew Romo there, obviously one of the better players in the league. And then a bunch of guys that haven't quite lived up to the expectations yet. Ed Howard here down in the 20s. I'm sure a lot of us regret passing on. He's turned into a B shortstop, unfortunately injured for the year for the top Houston team there. They were looking like quite the powerhouse. That's a big sting for them. Robert Hassel down here looks really good. Sabato's really solid. So it's a really interesting draft class. If you sort it by WAR, sorry, I forgot to turn notifications off. You sort it by WAR there and a couple other things. I have my draft history, have a lot of stuff here. It shows all my pitching ratings and the hitting ratings. So you can sort it by any way you want. See all the guys have done really well, making a ton of money. Pena here is the 30th pick of the 18th round. 547 players went before this beast. So you just see the crazy career he's had. It's pretty cool. Escada is the second best player from this draft. Might even be better than Pena. The fact that he's a lefty elite starting pitcher compared to the DH Pena. This guy is just insane. And then I just realized that Pittsburgh had him too, so they could have had Lacy, Peaker Armstrong, and a skate all from that draft, which is crazy. Romo's put up. So I'm searching by salary here. You can see kind of who's performed the major league level to get these big salaries. Down here you get Eric Walker, who, funny enough, we talked about in the offseason, posted him. This guy is playing in Asia. Was like a late round pick by the old Angels guy. I think he was like a 38th rounder. And look at the way this guy's developed. That's insane. Playing the NPD. It's just crazy. And then, so anyways, that's for 2020. Enough about that draft. A couple awesome players from that. If you look at 2021, kind of learn our history a little bit. This draft was very interesting. You have Kimura Rocker, sorry, I mispronounced that. First overall, turned into a stud, on pace for 5 WAR this season. Painter, unfortunately, has lost his control, but he still looks good at everything else. But some guys just can't put the ball in the strike zone, unfortunately, like real life. Pitchers are really hit and miss. Brady House looks pretty solid, but it really stings for those teams all to pass on this Mayer and Leto combo. The Leto, I know, fell maybe partly because he had that huge signing bonus that a couple teams maybe couldn't afford at like $10 million. But he's been worth every penny and about 10 times that. Marcelo Meyer is just as good as Leto. Is an insane talent. Both those guys have developed so much. Mayer, especially on defense, has come a long way. I thought he was more of a 60-65 range guy when they drafted him. He's added about 10 to everything there, which is really cool. You got another top-notch shortstop here in Isaac Pacheco. So that draft really had some studs. And then you also have the 80 range, 75 range Noah Smith. So this draft's crazy, thin fielder talent. Not a lot else. You do have quite a bit of guys that haven't really come too far other than that. Magwood actually looks really good for Miami, a starting pitcher. You got Weiss is still a prospect in Seattle there. Some of the guys later, if you look at sort by salary here, you can see this catcher's come along really nicely. He was actually the guy traded for Pete Armstrong, starting catcher for the Detroit for multiple years, always about 2.5 WAR, solid player. Gus Riddell's looking really good. I don't know who picked him originally. Kansas City picked him in the 8th round. He's developed really nicely for Boston. Philip Abner looks like an absolute stud. He was a draft choice. I guess he was picked by... Yeah, it shows right here, too, draft team, which is cool. So Atlanta picked Abner and Amsdorf, which is nuts. Both those guys look really good. And then I guess they're both traded to the Mets. And then Adon actually looks incredible. I didn't realize he was only a 4th-round pick. This guy actually looks like one of the best young arms in the league. For Cincinnati, him and Morjon look like an awesome duo there. Who else you got here? You got Baker. Becker, I forgot about him. Did he regress a lot? Yeah, wow, he really lost some shit. He was looking really good a couple of years ago. I don't know. Kind of lost a little bit of his potentials there. Carrier's down here. He was, what was he? Really late pick. I think he's 6th-rounder. Turned into a freak. So yeah, this draft's really interesting if you look at that kind of stuff. And then we'll quickly just go over the last few. I don't want to make this video super long. We got Dylan Lesko in this draft. Dylan Lesko looked like the best pitching prospect we had seen at the time. He lost a little bit of control and kind of lost that starter's profile. Looks like a top-end, high-leverage bullpen guy, though. Started to gain some of his stuff and movement back, and now he looks pretty solid. Doesn't look like he's going to be that 4 or 5 or 6 WAR starting pitcher, but looks like he will be a really important piece for a major league team. You got Cole retired, which was a big oof. And then you got a couple really nice guys. Doughty was the prize of this draft. Doughty is a 4 WAR guy who in almost most seasons, I guess I would say, would win Rookie of the Year. Had a lot of good competition last year for Rookie of the Year, but Doughty, who's a star. Spencer Jones looks like a stud. Judson Fabian's really good. Clifford hasn't quite developed. You got Tamar Johnson, who I don't know why this is on OSA. Head scout. Tamar Johnson looks like a beast. He had an 87 stolen base season, has 5.6 WAR in A-ball, and then jumped to AA, and now he's in the major leagues, and he looks like an amazing player. You got Drew Jones, who looks like he has the same profile as Bader, a major league center fielder, wins some Gold Gloves and won a World Series last year with me. Looks like a very similar profile, so see if he can be an impact player on a good team like that. I think Berea looks really good for Arizona. Nice electric arm, bullpen piece. Hunter Barco looks pretty solid there, another good lefty. You got some really solid players. My guy, unfortunately, made a big comeback. Looked like a bust and then kind of recovered, but now he blew his arm, which sucks. But if you look, there's a lot of trending upwards there, so it's kind of a tough one. Just jumped up back, got his control back for me, so really looking like a solid prospect, but that's unfortunate. What else you got here? You got Nolan Chris. This guy looks like a pretty solid starting pitcher at the major league level soon here. Gabriel Hughes has some monster control. Looks like another major league starting pitcher there. If you look at this draft, you could probably sort by salary here. I don't think anyone's in arbitration yet, so no one's making any money from this draft yet. But just kind of sorting by the big categories here. Logan Forsythe, that's actually one of the better players in this draft, 4th-round pick, is dominating, absolutely dominating this season with the most hilarious I've ever seen, a .08 FIP, striking out 51% of guys for Pittsburgh. Just a freakish season he's having so far. Obviously very early still. If you look at infield range, you got a couple shortstop prospects here. Outfield range, you got Elijah Green, 1st-round pick. He won. Yeah, I think he's been in the minors for about 5 years now. Doesn't seem to have developed too much. I think they've held him at rookie ball a little long there, but it's also tough to move a guy up to A-ball with that terrible approach. But he did win MVP of the DSL or GCL last year, I think. You got some interesting players from this draft, and we'll jump to 23. 23, you have Bo Owensby, 1st overall pick. They're going to team him with the guy they just took this year, Weathers, in the draft. Form a really good infield. Both guys have 60 power plus. Dodson's pretty good. You got Cole. Chad Cole was a big-time piece in the trade a couple years ago. Has lost his control, unfortunately. Looks like a little bit of a bust now. Stansbury, really interesting, 6'8", first baseman. I always want to keep an eye on him. Couple guys. Ricky Areola looks like one of the best players in this draft. This guy is turning into the best catching prospect in baseball. Looks like a catcher that can give you about 3 WAR offensively at least. Be a plus hitter with huge approach, big gap power, which is monstrous in Boston as a righty bat, hitting nonstop doubles off the wall there. So that guy's going to be an insane player. Just incredible. 6'5" ability too at the catcher spot. So that guy's just top 5 prospect in baseball, in my opinion. A lot of guys, this is a really bad draft. The second overall pick looks like a bust, unfortunately for Baltimore. My bad. Tim Long was a big piece in a trade this offseason. Now he's in Houston. Looks like a good player still. Aguilar looked really good for a while there and then kind of has a little bit of negative regression last year. Lost a little bit of movement and stuff, but still looks really solid. And if you look at range, I'd like to look at the ranges quickly and see the kind of beast offensive outfielders, defensive outfielders. Jalen Wells has come a long way for KC. He's almost outperformed Jeff Dodson. I still think Dodson and him are in a battle, see who will be the better player. The third overall pick and KC's third round pick, both really good bats there. Went with a couple of really good offensive players in that draft. 2024, we're getting closer to the more recent, so you won't be able to tell a lot yet. This draft, you got a couple superstars. Olivia looks like a star. He's developing nicely. He was all 30s at the draft, and now he's all 35 and 40s. Still only 20 years old. Switch hitter with 65 power. And best mentals in the entire game, I'd say. 65 range guy. So he just looks like him and Kerstad and KC and Drew Jones gives them just so many insane outfielders. Mastradamus looks like a ace type starting pitcher. Bobby Bradford looks pretty close to that. We got a couple, 3 center fielders in a row here went, so that was really interesting. Ben Jackson was the most talented player in the draft, had some kind of bad mentals. It's developed decently, looks like a major league player, just waiting on his contact, but he still could probably be a fringe major league player now with that top-notch defense. Just if his bat comes along a little farther, he'll be a stud outfielder. Chad McGee was the high contact guy. Looks like he's like a singles hitter, the defensive outfielder there. So this draft was interesting. Napier's probably the highest ceiling guy. This guy has got a plus hit tool and a plus power bat. Looks like he could hit 40 home runs from the shortstop second base position. This guy is an absolute monster. It was a shocker at the draft. He fell to 18, and still to this day, he looks like the best player from that draft class. I think that guy is going to be a star in Arizona. We'll see how many home runs he puts up this year. I remember it was really tough for decision for me to pass on the Levine. I really liked him, so I was curious to see how he'd turn out. Couple Boston guys here. Boston traded for Dick out and drafted Morrison. They got both these guys in the system here. So I think Nixon was really cool. That's a catcher with 6'5" ability, 45 bat, 65, doesn't strike out much at all. Still a really solid looking pitching prospect. So a really cool two-way player in KC there. So anyways, I don't want to talk for too long. So I'd go over, do a quick recap. And I don't know if I mentioned last year's draft yet. I think I remember Peterson was my favorite player in that draft, along with Ellie. A couple absolute stars from last year's class. This guy looks really good too for Washington. Developed really nicely with some crazy pitches. And the Phil Peters just looks like a major league guy already. They have him down in high A for some reason still. I think he's more of a double A, triple A player. Should probably be in the majors right now. This guy just kind of manipulate him some service time maybe. I guess they have Dom Smith in the major league level already. A couple big bats. Kind of saving his money a little bit and call him up probably in September or something. We'll see. But an absolute freak bat. This guy is just going to hit so many home runs in New York. It's going to be scary. Looks like Paul Goldschmidt, an absolute star first baseman. I remember this draft was really interesting. You got a lot of pitchers there at the end of the first round. So really cool overall draft. So I'll end it here. I didn't want to make this episode longer than 20 minutes, so that should be good. But just a cool episode to kind of recap everything, show you guys how to do all the history stuff, and it'll help you guys. It's been a pleasure, boys.